You're listening to The Dealmaker's Edge with A.Y. Strauss, diving deep into stories behind commercial real estate leaders. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Dealmaker's Edge. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by my friend, Jason Bordainick. It's a very exciting conversation. Jason's bio is that he co-founded a Hudson Valley Property Group with a vision to create the preeminent housing preservation firm, improving upon the availability, quality, and affordability of housing across the country. HVPG acquires existing multifamily properties and enhances their sustainability, leveraging innovative strategic partnerships in the areas of healthcare, education, and technology to deliver added value for residents and investors. He's a recognized industry leader. Jason applies his creativity and business acumen towards building an impactful organization that achieves outstanding results for its partners, both for-profit and nonprofit, and the communities it serves. He's a frequent lecturer, and prior to building this company, he built Off-Campus Partners, which was the nation's largest online marketplace for off-campus housing, which helps millions of students secure housing each year, which was ultimately acquired by CoStar in 2019. And throughout his career, Jason has successfully executed over $2.5 billion of investments on behalf of private investors and corporations. He has an MBA from Stanford, and undergrad went to University of Virginia. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Jason. We're going to talk about how he got to where he is and his operating principles and how he manages the day-to-day while keeping the bigger vision in sight. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Dealmaker's Edge. Today, we're really excited to be joined by my friend Jason Bordainick, who's really done some amazing work in the affordable housing space and who's built a fabulous business and who's got a really interesting background. And we're excited to tell his story, or rather have him tell it. So Jason, welcome to the podcast. Thank you again for making time out of your crazy schedule.
Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
And I know we typically try to start from the beginning because it usually, you try to see where people come from and how they get on their entrepreneurial track. But maybe you can give us a couple-minute biographical sketch before we start hard-hitting questions in commercial real estate industry at large.
So I grew up in Rockland County. I was the son of a couple of public school educators, and learned early importance of service and doing things the right way, and ended up going to school at University of Virginia. I was an athlete, and so I wanted to go to a school where I could compete at the Division I level and also get a good education. I did track and baseball, but I was high school All-American in track and competed at the ACC level in track for a bit. And I started my entrepreneurial journey while I was in undergrad. I started a company from my dorm room, won a business plan competition, ended up setting up my first business, helping students find places to live through an online platform. And that business ended up expanding out nationwide and became the largest online marketplace for off-campus student housing, and was ultimately acquired by CoStar, which owns apartments.com and a variety of other assets. So I had a first successful entrepreneurial endeavor, knew this is what I wanted to do. And then I teamed up with my childhood friend, Andy Cavaluzzi, to start Hudson Valley Property Group in 2010. And it's been quite the ride. 15 years we've been doing it and have built the leading platform in affordable housing preservation. He's done nearly 20,000 units and over $4 billion of projects. And I was saying, the thing I didn't mention in there was also I went back, got my MBA at Stanford, and all this stuff was, the entrepreneurial things kind of was before that and after as well. So
it's exciting. And it's the classic dorm room story, but to have success is very unique. And that's a testament to your vision, entrepreneurial abilities. But if I remember correct, Off-Campus Partners got to millions and millions of students a year really using it as a platform. Very hard to create a platform for anything, frankly, but to get national adoption is very significant. So congrats on that first win, if you will. And then, having the relationship you have with your current partner going back for many, many years, I'm sure it was helping. And maybe you could talk about how you got started. I know we've talked about it. I've read about it online as well, that first acquisition, I think it was like 8 to 10 units, and informing your interest in this sort of asset class where it's hopefully a win-win-win all around, and maybe how you just got started on the real estate side would be great.
Andy and we reconnected, I think it was around 2000. we've known each other since first grade, and then we each went, different ways. Both became entrepreneurs in different realms, and we got reconnected on a project in 2008, which at first was going to be a side investment. We were going to, buy this property, fix it up, and make a good real estate investment. And through working on that one project, which happened to be an affordable housing property, we saw one that it could be both a good business, but also something that really at our core we felt like was meaningful work, and something that got us both excited about finding the next project and continuing to build the scale. And I think kind of a much larger vision came together when we noticed that that one opportunity was not really just isolated. It was part of a bigger space, and we could do what we're doing and do it on much greater scale, and have, do well by doing good is what we say. Create an amazing business, but doing one that is solving a problem in communities across the country.
Absolutely. And you've come to dominate this industry too. Maybe you could talk a little bit about learning about the low income housing tax credit, learning about credits in general on the federal level, working with various agencies. Kind of like a lot of people listening to this, and myself included, my knowledge of affordable housing is weak. Either you're deep in that space, I find, you don't dabble in it, or you ignore it altogether. So maybe you can kind of just talk through, for maybe somebody who's investing in retail or maybe traditional multi or industrial, whatnot, just kind of the fundamentals of the business and how you make all those parties work together for a successful transaction.
When people say, "Hey, I work in affordable housing," that means different things to different people. We work in what we refer to as capitally affordable. This is not like lowercase affordable. These are properties on some form of program that is designed to make that housing affordable to the low and moderate income communities across the country. And that could be working class people in high cost of living areas. That could be seniors retired on a fixed income, which actually has grown to be probably the largest, and it's going to be the majority of the housing in there, because people are living longer. You have the baby boomers kind of going, the demographic shifts, and a lot of other trends. But these are properties that in a high cost of living area, the numbers just don't work to just say, "Hey, I'm going to spend all the money building a property, and then I'm going to, choose to make this available to the lowest brackets." The cost of building an apartment, whether it's affordable or whether it's market rate, there's a large fixed component to that. And so you really need these programs set up in thoughtful ways. And two of the bigger programs are Section 8 and low income housing tax credits, also known as LIHTC. And between the two, there's about 4 million units of these properties. And the demand for it is like, off the charts. Sometimes, people say 4 times it, 5 times it. And I think it's only going to explode. The cost of living goes up, and impacts of things like AI on, potentially displacing some jobs. So I think it's, there are these units out there today that are on these programs, and there is a business case, and we've been proving it out, or, of you could buy these properties, improve them, work with the programs, with sort of a public-private model where you invest money. The government and the programs have mechanisms to, create attractive returns, to attract capital, and to help ensure that we keep those properties affordable, help keep them maintained and reinvested in. And so, that's really where we operate. And there is a need for it. There's complexities, there's, understanding how it all works, but all of that is really kind of a barrier to entry. And so if you could wrap your head around it and understand it and do it well, you could build a business around it. But there's definitely a need for more capital to flow into the space, and we're one of the larger groups doing that.
Yeah, and that's well said and well articulated, of course. I mean, I think I recall when you started, it was, classic syndication. Let's bring in friends, let's bring in family. You want to write a check, it's based on trust. But now you've really proven out a model to scale. I think, I forget your ranking, but it's way up there. I think were you like number 2 in the country as far as acquisitions in 24? And I don't even know your numbers in 25, but maybe you could talk about kind of bridging the gap from somebody starting at the smaller levels to where now you get institutionally. There's obviously a big gap between, but how did you get from those initial stages, those initial days, to building critical mass, to attracting your first institutional investor in the space? And then we'll get to where you are now, but maybe that transition period would be exciting to hear about.
Yeah, we've been scrappy entrepreneurs. And so I think this might resonate. I mean, we're not a story where, our parents had a big real estate firm. We started with a base, we split off. We're not someone that was at a big place and then leveraged that to then kind of getting the ground, which are all viable paths. We built this from scratch and we had to establish credibility. We had to gain the expertise. But I think big picture, regardless of what asset class you go into, really the market rewards execution and consistency, credibility, and discipline over time. I mean, those are the things that you really need to build trust, because at the end of the day, someone's going to be giving you money, whether it's an individual, family office, a bank, an insurance, and down. And we've now continued to grow. Now we have sovereign wealth funds that at the end of the day, you got to gain that trust. And the way to do that is through showing that you could execute, with results. And so I think we did that project by project. We built a little bit of a resume, of these are the things that we did. And now that we've done this is what we learned, and this is how we're going to apply it. And so, you start out with people who are, from our story, we started out with friends, family, classmates, and we were not talking about big checks. We had people writing $5,000 checks, $10,000 checks. We compiled it together to, I think initially our first raise was about $500,000. Turned the $500,000 into probably about $2 million. Then those investors said, "Hey, I like what you did for us. Why don't we reinvest it?" That 2 grew to 5, and the 5, kept them reinvesting it. And then they told their friends, they told others, and then we had, just from that initial base, we had a very healthy portion, or our initial institutional fund came from what you would refer to as small LPs that I reinvested in. And then we were able to attract institutional partners that, were impressed by what we were doing, had some familiarity with the space. They knew how hard it was to execute, and we were doing it well and doing it consistently. And so then, we started in 2010, and so built the track record really over 7-8 years before we launched our first fund. And it's really snowballed from there. And because the first fund was very successful and then led to a second, and now we're raising a third institutional fund. That's actually a global fund now, and we have investors now around the world. But it's really just one step at a time, proving out that you can execute, you can get things done. This is what I say I'm going to do, and this is what actually happened. And that's how you really build the trust.
No, 100%. And I love the way you just casually describe, 15 plus years or 16 plus years of brutal blood, sweat, and tears. It just rolls off your tongue as if it was like just very chill. And I'm sure there's a ton of heartache and an enormous amount of work. I know the way you work. We're very focused. So congrats on all that. And I think you're in fundraising mode. So I guess we won't talk about that because there's all sorts of rules around that. But you've certainly done a fabulous job of attracting capital. I think at this point, you've got over $4 billion of assets under management, if I'm not mistaken, and it's over 20,000 units you've worked on. And as far as pipeline, it seems like, I mean, I knew that huge deal recently when you got into the Western states. That was thousands of apartments. That was massive. Do you see the pipeline for even continued growth? I know your kind of ranks as a specialist in that market keeps increasing, and you've also, I think I was reading that you've adopted a high level of industry standards to, I forgot the exact technical term, but maybe you could describe how you become a leader now. You're in that high pecking order. How do you continue to make progress, continue to inspire your team, deploy capital? Now you're, a CEO of a much bigger company. So how do you kind of project your ethos through the business, and what do you see for future growth?
My partner and I, we really believe in like a values first leadership. We're We say how you do anything is how you do everything. You really want to instill integrity and discipline and follow through. Like, hey, this is what we say we are going to do, and we do, whether it's an investor, whether it's a resident community, whether it's a local council person. Really build those trust, build those partnerships, because that's how you do great work. Things happen and you need help. You need to team up with people to get it done right. And so we built that culture. We attract great people. People have been with us for a long time, and constantly kind of helping us set even bigger targets. So I think definitely, like, my team at Hudson Valley is amazing, and that's what's going to help us get to where we're going. I think it's having standards, and I think early on there's just like, you really want to get deals done because you want to build that track record, and maybe there's things that you kind of, all right, like, maybe you'll widen your kind of what you would look for because you just really want to get there. But I think as we get, we're more established now, we have really the ability to do any size project, and we could do anywhere in the US. We're really leaning in on the discipline to make sure we're choosing the right projects, not getting our resources tied up on something that is not going to result in the outcome we're looking for. And so we really refining our screening and using technology to do that, using kind of process and even now AI to kind of help do this in a more efficient way. But it's really doing great projects leads to other projects, and great is both from like an investor perspective, but also from the communities that we operate in. And so, yeah, I think selecting projects, we're trying to now think about, as we raise more and more capital, like, we have to really deploy capital at scale. So larger portfolios, larger platform acquisitions are things that we are, really focused on. But then also identifying like regional JV partners, maybe people on this call here who are like, man, I have a way to kind of find these opportunities. I have the relationships. We're definitely open to having conversations about being the capital partner for that, figuring out how we could really scale. So yeah, it's discipline, but it's standards of what makes a good project. And that's not just from like the financial side, but it's like our design and construction team is continually thinking about like putting in the better materials, doing things that are going to really, really make a difference in the day-to-day lives of the people living there, from a physical side, and the amenities and the programs and services that could really uplift the communities from an impact side. Like, we're thinking about all those things, and we try to score it and focus our efforts on the stuff that's really going to move the needle in all those ways. And that's how we build a reputation of doing great work. And that leads to attracting great people, but also attracting projects and people who want to work with us.
Absolutely. I want to work with you guys. How can I get a job there? I'm just going to leave the law. I want to just hang out with you guys and do deals. It sounds like fun.
Let's do it.
But all kidding aside, what about, maybe we could talk a little bit about adversity. One of the things we try to tap into on these podcasts is that, we're interviewing the best of the best, the elite, most successful people. But I think there's a misunderstanding. People just think, oh, that's how they did it. It was so easy. And so I always try to sprinkle in the fact that besides for being an economic roller coaster, physical roller coaster, there's stress levels that go up and down. There's deals that explode for no reason other than they were just doomed from the start. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that adversity and kind of how you speak to yourself in times of stress and how you manage through those periods. Because whether you're buying your first property or 100th property, no matter what you're doing on this call, people just assume success often is linear. But we all know it's a tons of ups and downs and moving sideways. How do you kind of get your spirit up? How do you manage the mental aspect of juggling all you have to juggle?
Great question. I would say both of my two entrepreneurial endeavors, I had very challenging early days. Even the background of starting my first business, I ended up having an injury in track that ended up kind of curtailing my track career, and then using that time into building my first business. And when launching, off-campus partners, which was originally off grounds, we were a completely new concept, and a lot of the large owners didn't like that we were coming in. We were kind of making it an even playing field for all the, it was really like helping students have the selection versus kind of allowing the existing duopoly to control things. And so they actually tried to illegally replicate the software and technology. And, long story short, was able to kind of find a path through that. And then it's actually, when you get through it, it builds the grit, and it gives you the confidence to take on the next endeavor. And I would say Hudson Valley was actually that on steroids, I guess, because it wasn't just challenging, it was for a prolonged period of time. Andy and I, we had a big vision from the start, and I think we were breaking into something that was high barriers to entry. You had to have the relationships, and we took a lot of swings and misses. A lot of RFPs, a lot of proposals, and every time we were like just this far away from doing it. And yeah, we could go through, we bond over it, and that's actually some of the silver lining, is that I would say the early days of Hudson Valley, which was like trying to get that early projects, took us almost 3.5 years. So people say, all right, like, you look at this, wow, you went like in this very steep, go from 0 to 20,000, but it was like 0 for a very, meaningful, period of time. But what I would say is during those tough periods, it actually, like, it drew us closer. Like, Andy and I were, obviously we were, similar values and background, but we're both equally committed to building this. And I think partnerships really are built when you have two people, or more than two people, like, that are equally committed to seeing a success. And so I think now when we go and we have challenges, it's like, wow, this is nothing compared to trying to do what we did in the beginning, when we had no resources, we had no track record, no real strong banking relationships, investor relationships. So yeah, I think adversity kind of sharpens the knife, and kind of also gives you the grit, and it's pushing through that ultimately gives you the confidence. But I think from the mental side, I think it's important I'm a big believer in making sure your health and wellness are really focused on. I mean, it's keeping a good active daily routine. You got to have the ways that you de-stress and reset, and ensure that you can get good sleep, and you can like, all that makes you stay grounded. It helps you bring more clarity and more energy to everything you do. So definitely it's been a big part of pulling through it, of really trying, I meditate, I do other things. So it's having that tenacity, but then also making sure that you're taking care of yourself at the same time.
Well said. And you really project a good, healthy sense of equilibrium. So maybe I got to pick up some more meditation skills from you. We'll talk about that offline. But it's been fabulous to watch your success. You've really grown tremendously in all the right ways. Maybe we'll touch on one last question, because we try to keep these episodes in a certain time range. But the proverbial next gen person coming up through the ranks, they want to get on your calendar, they want career advice. They're picking it up through this conversation, I think, organically. But if you had to kind of imbue some operating principles beyond just be excellent, be consistent, be tenacious, is there any other kind of tips of the trade for long-term success you'd throw out to individuals that could be meaningful when somebody's trying to find their way in this business?
Yeah, look, I think, at least within real estate, I do think ultimately, success will come from some level of specialization, because knowing the region, knowing the asset, knowing something very well, ultimately, I mean, being able to really have some level of edge. We always ask, like, what is our angle on this? What is it? What is it that we're doing that we can do better than someone else? And now, early in your career, you kind of obviously need to get there. You got to, like, work hard. You got to apply yourself. And so, yeah, it's definitely finding things that resonate, and where you're going to come up and be excited to try and be good at whatever that trade or field is. But then once you find that, it's continually thinking about, like, what's the value that I'm bringing? Where am I going to help us and this company get an edge? And if you're able to do that, and collaborating with others to find that, that's ultimately you're gonna be noticed by that place, and given opportunities to take on more responsibility and grow. And then, whether you go out on your own and do that. And then this is more current, but it is, relevant, but it's AI is a game changer right now that's came out. And I think it is something that people who know how to apply that to the work they're doing and leverage it so they can do more. I think in the current environment where we are today, that is going to be a differentiator. And also being able to bring ideas to companies and say, hey, like, I know, I know how to implement this in a way that's going to actually make your company more efficient, and let me show you and let me help others get there. If you're that kind of a person, I mean, this is very current. It's not just like a sales pitch. Like, if you actually are and you actually do have that, I think that's going to be very attractive to companies and will probably create opportunities. And so that would be probably in the current environment, the best like initial like hook and things if you actually have a way to do that. But then I don't think longer term, hard work and applying yourself and building relationships and building trust, that's going to be the recipe to really success.
100%. And well said, as always. I always love talking to you. Always get great perspective. I think you're very inspirational. I think people will learn a lot from this episode, as I have. And I guess we'll wrap it here, Jason, because I know you've got to get to a million things as far as international travel and just managing the day-to-day. But, success couldn't happen to a better person. Let's just put it that way. And I'm thankful for your friendship, thankful for you taking the time, and just want to continue to watch your journey, my friend. Keep up the awesome job executing on the big vision.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for joining the Dealmaker's Edge. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. And please give us a 5-star rating so more people can follow the conversation.